Hello, this is the Private Investigator Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Little. On this channel, we look at the cases and life of a private investigator, and we also investigate situations that are going on not only across the nation, but around the world that could affect us in our own communities around security and helping protect ourselves from becoming a victim. I must say that as an investigator, I've been troubled with what I'm learning and seeing about the things that's been going on in our country, particularly around the corruption that is being exposed, that it's beyond words. It's unfathomable. I've watched some of the senators, and Senator Kennedy is one. I love him, his sense of humor, and talking about the 92 billion that was loaned out by the SBA and other organizations after Trump was elected before he was inaugurated. It's mind blowing everywhere. And I'm wondering, is there possibility of what's happening now with the anti-corruption and rooting out this pervasive evil in our political system? And it's been on both sides. Right now, it's more exposed on the left with what they've been doing, but there have been politicians on the right side that's been part of this, got their, as a farmer would say, that had the hog farmer. We used to raise hogs on the farm when I was growing up. They got their snout in the trough and they're sucking it up as fast as they can. But what's the hope? One of my problems is that, and concerns, I should say, is after the election, so many people went back to their armchair and said, wow, well, we've got the leaders now that's going to make change. We'll let them do it. That's their job. I'm tired of the election. I'm tired of all the political stuff. And if we, that's going to be our downfall. What you're hearing, as an example, the President of the United States a few weeks ago made a statement that there are two genders, male and female. Big news, right? No, it's not. Not for those of us who know the Bible. In Genesis, it said God made male and female. That's it. It's not what I say. It's not what some other person says. It's what the God of this universe says. But why did that have to come from a politician? What has been happening to the church, to the pastors and preachers that are standing in their pulpits? They're so afraid to speak truth that they're saying user friendly messages. Oh, I don't want to offend anyone. Excuse me? Telling the truth, biblical truth, is offending someone? You know, the Bible didn't say that Jesus came to bring unity. He said he came to bring division, to sort out evil, and to separate it from godliness. So my concern is that the church world, unless we conservative and Christian and people who just believe in the Constitution, maybe you don't have a religion, but you want the country to follow the Constitution, the rule of law. No one's above it. As we're seeing right now, some of those on the left that had gone after President Trump are now under the spotlight for doing the worse than what they're accusing him of doing, and then because of actual fact on what they're doing. The answer is not going to be from politicians. I believe if we want to stop the possibility of the left regaining power and reversing these anti-corruption efforts and bringing back all the corruption and politicians with their snout in the trough, then we conservative Christians and pastors and leaders have to stand up and tell the truth. No, we don't need to be political in the pulpits, but we need to approach the cultural things that are going on just as the disciples did, just as Jesus did when he was on earth. So the title of what I'm looking at here, I dug into this and I invite you to also do your own digging. Don't take my word for anything. Find out for yourself. So the title, of this little post is the possibility of the left regaining power and reversing anti-corruption efforts. My purpose is to examine the likelihood of a political shift to the left in the U.S. and its potential impact on the anti-corruption reforms that are being done now. And I'm looking at this through a conservative Christian lens, my biblical worldview. But I'm not looked at as a Republican, a Democrat, or independent, or libertarian. I'm just looking at it as a follower of the way, follower of Jesus. Well, what's the definition of corruption? The Transparency International's definition is a misuse of public power for private gain, including bribery, nepotism, and cronyism, and other illegal acts. Is it possible that the left could regain power through electoral or social dynamics, reversing effective anti-corruption measures? Can they do that? I think they would face significant hurdles due to public demand for accountability and for the institutional safeguards that are now being put in place and some being enacted in laws, which means those of us who support rooting out corruption must remain alert, vocal, and active in sharing our Christian conservative perspective, which emphasizes integrity and justice, as guiding principles for government. As I said in my beginning there, the opening, I believe that the root cause of all the problems we see in our society is a lack of a scriptural foundation. And we might say it this way. The world has infected the church more than the church infecting the world. The church needs to come out, be vocal, and involved in cultural events that go against biblical rule. Micah 6:8 in the Old Testament calls for justice and humility. And it brings corruption. It's a moral failure that Christians must address impartiality, not from a political viewpoint. Well, then, what's the understanding of corruption in politics? What are some you might have just become speechless at the scope of the corruption that Doge and others have uncovered? Billions, yes, billions, being stolen over many years with impunity. As an example, I mentioned the 92 billion that was, or 93 billion that was given out in loan to volumes of people and without even having the documentation to prove they could repay it. Between the election of Donald Trump and before he was inaugurated. In an example from 2025 include this corruption as misuse of public funds or favoritism in contracts. What has been the historical context then? Corruption has existed across political ideologies. The U.S. Faced systematic corruption in the 19th century via political machinery, according to a Harvard Law School 2020 report. What then is my Christian view, and what should it be? Luke chapter 16, verses 10 through 12 in the New Testament emphasizes faithfulness in small matters, suggesting that corruption violates God's call for stewardship. Christians should demand transparency regardless of party. Is there facts to support the claim of left-driven corruption? Let's look at specific examples of misuse of public funds. But I'm just going to mention 2 or 3 organizations and examples of this political corruption from the left. And I encourage you, do your own investigation, do the digging, and you'll find out it's all there. One is Act Blue. They've been accused of facilitating illegal donations to support left-leaning campaigns. This was particularly amplified in 24 and 25 in the claims that billions of dollars in potential laundered funds were funneled through Act Blue to influence U.S. election. The details behind this, the allegation suggests that Act Blue was used to process donations from foreign entities or through straw donors, violating U.S. campaign finance laws that prohibit foreign contributions in our elections. Well, that's logical, right? Some report point to suspicious patterns such as large numbers of small repeated donations from individuals who didn't have the means to contribute. For example, um, there's been cited investigations by figures like James O'Keefe alleging that Act Blue's lax verification enabled illicit funding. Let's look then at FEMA. It's another disaster that happened in the hurricanes and the distribution controversies. It's alleged that Democratic officials or appointees within FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, manipulated disaster relief distribution to favor Democratic leaning communities or individuals being doing recent natural disasters such as hurricanes in 2024. What are some of the details behind that? Whistleblowers and facts that have come out shows that FEMA relief funds or resources were withheld from areas of or individuals perceived to support Republican candidates, particularly in the swing states. Specific accusations point to whistleblowers' accounts from inside FEMA alleging that aid was prioritized based on political demographics rather than need. For example, there's been highlighted reports of relief delays in conservative regions, attributing them to partisan bias. This is one big one now that this defies comprehension. That's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. It's an agency championed by Senator Elizabeth Warren. It was actually started back during the Obama years, and it has been central to allegations of corruption from records found by Doge investigations and other audits. Before I outline specific claims of corruption tied to CFPB, focusing on its structure, operations, and funding as uncovered by Doge audits of records. And below, I'm going to outline specific claims of corruption tied to the CFPB. I want to focus on its structure, operations, and funding as uncovered by Doge and other audits. Since the CFPB is not supposedly directly by Senator Warren, she proposed and helped establish it, but does not run its operations, right? So she says. But evidence tied to emails and her handwriting on documents show the true fact that she controls what they do. Now check it out yourself. I'll focus on allegations related to involvement in the agency's activities, just to give you a little overview. There's way too much to talk about in this phone. Allegations of CFPB as an extortion racket. Auditors have accused the CFPB of operating as a shakedown racket. That sounds like something out of the mafia. And it's under the guise of consumer protection, with claims that it extorts money, now listen to this, from financial institutions to fund left-leaning political causes. These allegations often tie back to Warren's role in creating the agency and giving day-to-day directions to its leaders behind the scenes. Let's look at some detail. One from a 2019 claimed that the CFPB targeted organizations which could pay indulgent fees or fines or settlements to avoid further scrutiny. Pay us off and we won't audit your book. With hundreds of millions of dollars allegedly funneled to left-wing political groups or candidates. Another one, February 2025, called the CFPB racketeering operation that extorts money through fines, implying that Senator Warren designated it to centralize power and enrich political allies. Now, one of the problems is that's come under a lot of scrutiny, both from the courts and even the Supreme Court. The agency's funds come directly from the Federal Reserve, and this allows a lack of direct congressional oversight, allowing this organization to operate with excessive autonomy, potentially enabling misuse of funds. The agency's funding is drawn down directly from the Federal Reserve rather than congressional appropriations. And it's designed to insulate it supposedly from political influence. So critics and the facts show that this has enabled accountability. Well, funding for 1 year, like the CFPB, is funded through these transfers from the Federal Reserve, and they receive a set percentage of its budget. In 2024, they received $285 million, bypassing the congressional appropriation process. There was a 2019 article from The Hill noted that the agency's director can only be fired by the president for just cause. That limits accountability to Congress on the public. But now that's been changed by the Supreme Court. Multiple lower courts have ruled the CFPB structure unconstitutionally structured due to this independence. In 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court reviewed the CFPB's funding mechanism in a case brought by payday lenders. But a ruling back in 2020 had affirmed the agency's constitutionality, though it allowed the president to remove the director without cause. What's the possibility? Now there's more. There's hundreds of situations have been uncovered about corruption. And I submit to you, check it out yourself and find out. If you have been watching, if you've only been listening to CNN and NBC or the legacy media, you haven't heard about a lot of these things, I'm sure. Well, Democrats held the presidency from 2008 to 2016 and from 20 to 2024. It showed a electoral competitiveness there, and the midterms and presidential elections, 26 and 2028, could shift control, which can happen. But fortunately, the Democrats' position right now on subjects and how they're leading and swinging way to the left gives hope that they won't be able to get back in power. So what do we need to do, folks? I tell you, it's a great feeling to be on the winning side after the election. Conservative leaning, wow, doesn't it feel great? But we can't sit down and relax. We need to keep supporting that not only our government uncovers this corruption, but Congress then enacts laws so that another president that might be on the left could just come in and automatically executive order it out. So we need to keep up our voices and our actions. Some factor to remember that favor the left, perhaps, would be urban demographics, younger voters, progressive activism. However, conservative Christian voters retain a strong counterforce, especially on issues like family values and these conservative issues. So step out of the crowd, let your voice be heard. My Christian perspective, my biblical worldview. Proverbs 29:2 states, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. Why are we rejoicing? Why is the country much happier? Joy abounding across political lines and people? Because we have some righteous people in power that are transparent. Have you ever seen any transparent Republican, Democrat, or anything else that has been transparent as Trump has been almost every day, having the press in the Oval Office? He's taking questions from everybody. And what the Justice Department is doing, the FBI is doing, Homeland Security is doing, we're seeing it all in real time. What a change that's been. Do we want to go back to the 20 to 24 years under God rest President Biden? What a disaster. And he was so taken advantage of by so many people. These current reforms, these examples include transparency laws, procurement oversight, whistleblower protections. We need to be accessing their effectiveness and making sure Congress enables these by putting them into law so they can't be easily reversed. Is reversibility possible then? Reversing reforms requires legislative or executive action, which faces checks and balances. If we have an active, justice serving Congress and judges, what has happened? We've seen an overtaking of the justice system, the courts, by leftist radicals who are not voting, not making rulings on what the law is, but political persuasion. That has to end. We need public demand for more accountability. But we need a press that gets back to what it originally did, the legacy media, and becoming a fact finding, investigating groups that present the facts and let the people decide. Fortunately, now we've had a lot of the new media added to the White House briefing and other forms of media where we can get information. So get out on other media. Don't just watch one, two, or three, but look for conservative views and voices. Then what are the left stances right now? What's the possibility of them doing something in 2026 to get back in power? Some left-leaning policies are like campaign finance reforms. They align with some of their anti-corruption goals. However, progressing these systems can undermine any reforms that the Democrats might have had. So the likelihood is not very strong that they're going to be corruption reform minded. Psalms 33:12 emphasize that how a nation is blessed is by righteousness from the leadership on down. Christians should advocate for reforms that uphold justice, regardless of who holds power. Well, then, what are the challenges, the potential risks? If the left regains power, critics fear cronyism or policy favoritism, like contracts to allies, will be back. I'm not going to belabor all the facts that are out there that show how the radical left has taken billions of dollars out of the government for their own use or unauthorized uses. I would suggest you doing what I have done. Investigate for yourself how deep corruption is. Yes, some of it is pure theft, and there should be some politicians going to jail. Well, what are some safeguards then? Independent media, like I've said, legacy media becoming back to what they once were. Civil society, an unbiased judicial oversight can limit corruption reversals. Now we've seen a complete biased judicial in the lower court judges that have enacted things to try to stop Trump from their Democratic cronies filing these frivolous lawsuits. It's time we stand up against that. And Christians' response to corruption and power shifts, what our biblical mandate. Christians are called to seek justice. Isaiah 1:17. Pray for leaders. 1 Timothy 2:1 and 2. Corruption undermines God's design for government. Practical steps. Then what can we do? Advocate for transparency and accountability laws. Make your voice be heard, starting in your local community. Get involved, and if necessary, run for office. Support candidates and prioritize integrity, regardless of party. Engage in civil society to hold leaders accountable. Then what's the hopeful outlook? Romans 13:1 reminds us that all authority is under God's sovereignty and trust God's plan while working for righteousness. In conclusion, then, the left could regain power due to electoral and social trends, but reversing anti-corruption reforms is going to be challenging due to institutional and public pressure. Corruption is a bipartisan issue, requiring vigilance from us all. Then what is our call? What should we do? As conservative Christians, we must uphold the biblical principles of justice and stewardship, advocating for government governance that honors God and serves the public good. The final thought, John 8:32, promises that truth will set us free. Isn't a breath of fresh air the truth about corruption and how it's coming out? So we've got a chance to reverse it and stop it. By pursuing truth and accountability, we Christian conservatives can help ensure a just society, regardless of who holds power. Thank you for listening to the end. Thank you for sharing and liking and subscribing. And I just pray that you will be challenged to stand up. Let your voice be heard. Talk to your local pastors. Talk to your local leaders. Encourage your pastor to become vocal about what's going on in our society. Like I said, we don't have to talk about politics or political parties, but there are biblical things that are happening in society that go against the Bible. So I encourage you, step out of the crowd, get involved. Send me your emails, your comments. I appreciate getting those. Let me know what you think about this. Am I out in left field? Check me out. Find out what's going on. Then send me your thoughts or comments or something you would like checked out. And if you have a problem with your family or business that you would like to know if a PI can help you solve that problem, send that information to me and I'll get back to you. You can either leave the comments and any requests on any of the platforms, or better yet, email me directly at pi777@gmail.com. Remember, with God, nothing is impossible. Let's join together to stand up for righteousness and push back this evil in every form that it comes at us. May God bless you, your family. May God bless America. See you next time.